This morning, I went to the Akashic Records and I went in to ask about a very important and painful topic, something that I have dealt with pretty much my entire life. It's one of those topics that I don't even want to get into it here because honestly, like it's not the point. But I went into the Akasha thinking, oh my goodness, what are they going to tell me about this? Are they going to be able to help me with it? And I really, because this is such a huge topic and I've dealt with it for so long, I understand that this is going to require me looking at this in a number of different ways because ultimately, this is something that I need to really focus on healing in my life. And so, this sort of first session with them was really just about me understanding like where this issue originated and what the purpose of it is. And I had no idea what the Akashic Records was going to share with me. And it's so funny because even after all of these years of working in the Akashic Records, I was just like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? Like, are they even going to meet me here? Are they going to tell me new things? Are they going to, because again, this is not like a new topic. I have spent a lot of time with this topic on and off. I've spoken with friends about it. Anyway. And it was incredible what they brought through and really helped me to begin on my journey of understanding this topic, understanding what's going on so that ultimately I can release it. I can move past it when the time comes. So I was walking around this morning in a state of gratitude for the Akashic Records, for the role that they have played in my life. And I was really thinking about who the Akashic Records are and what they are. And this really incredible thing came up in my being. And it's like the Akashic Records are a way of life. And today I really want to talk to you about not the benefits of the Akashic Records, not, how the Akasha can make your life better. I mean, it 100% can. It will 100% transform you. Everything in your life will elevate, no doubt. But I thought it would be really interesting to talk about what happens to a human being who develops a relationship with the Akashic Records and to kind of talk about like the process that we move through in this relationship with the Akashic Records, kind of from like beginning to more of a place of mastery, of maturation, where we know how to go to the Akasha. We know how to work within the Akasha. We can communicate clearly in the Akasha, right? And what that impact has in our life, of course. But again, like what happens to us as a human being? I'm a big nerd about all things regarding humans, quite frankly. The psychology of a human being, the makeup, the why it is we do what we do. Like I'm a big nerd about all this stuff. And I always have been and I always will be because it's fascinating to me why we do what we do. And the Akashic Records, the ways in which, okay, the role that the Akashic Records can play in the role of someone's life is just so mind blowing. You got to remember, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we may know that logically. In fact, you've probably heard that numerous times, but have you ever taken the time to really sit with that and think about what it actually means? Do you even know in an embodied way what that means, right? Like, I'm a spiritual being. I'm having a human experience. What does that mean? How does that show up in my everyday, right? And so today we're really going to be talking about this because here's the deal. For the last couple of years, one of the things that I've really been saying is that the Akashic Records are the greatest tool for self-empowerment. And honestly, I think that in a way, I have belittled or diminished the Akashic Records by calling them a tool because they're not. They're not a tool. They're not a modality, even. The Akashic Records are a way of life. And when you learn how to work within the Akashic Records, it fundamentally changes you from a cellular level. You cannot compare the Akashic Records to astrology, human design, somatics, meditation, like any of these things, those are tools, those are modalities, and they all serve an incredible purpose. And I love like all of those. I'm a big nerd. I've done trainings, I've done, like I'm a huge fan. So it's not like there's not a place for these things, because there absolutely is. But the difference is that the Akashic Records doesn't belong in the same category, because ultimately all of those things came from the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records aren't another modality, aren't another tool. They are the frequency of God. And if you're brand new to my work, my definition of God is love. It is that simple. It is that profound. And the Akashic Records are ultimately a place of truth, a place that offers truth without distortion of our human wounds, our fears, conditionings, ego, projections, desires, limited perspectives. So when you learn how to access the Akashic Records, you aren't learning how to simply retrieve information. You're learning how to spend time in the frequency and in the perspective of God, which is pretty freaking insane. Insane to think about. And yet it's amazing to me, because Jesus came to basically say the same thing. And we're going to kind of dive into this and pull this apart today. And I may say some things that kind of you're like, wait, what? Like maybe even trigger you a little bit. Amazing. Amazing. I hope you sit with him. I hope you ask your questions. I hope you tune in and think about wait, okay, let me, because today is a bit of a nerdy sort of episode. But I really think that what happens to a human being when they become masters within the Akashic Records, when you, it is the Akashic Records changes everything about you. And there is so much to kind of dive into around this. And so today, again, we're going to be talking about that journey from someone who comes to the Akashic Records and the ways in which it changes you, and how it transforms you. Ultimately, the short answer is it brings you back to who you are. Today we're going to break it down, and we're going to break it down in some pretty practical ways that I think you're really going to enjoy. And especially if you are someone who works in the Akashic Records, or you are working in the Akashic Records, then I would love to hear how these things resonate with you. And if you can identify them in your life, and you don't have to be a master in the Akashic Records, you can even be someone who's newer. Ultimately, whether or not you're really going to see these things comes down to your relationship with the Akashic Records. Okay. So we're going to break it down. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm honestly going to try and calm myself, ground myself so that I can do this with you in a grounded way. All right. So if you are brand new to my work, welcome, welcome. My name is Anna Hendricks. I'm a spiritual guide, teacher, podcaster for over 6 years. I work within higher dimensional frameworks of wisdom that allow people to see their lives with greater clarity, context, and understanding, so that they can heal, fall in love with themselves, and ultimately return to who they are. So if you are really curious about the Akashic Records, about anything to do with self-development, healing, and for me, healing is returning to who you are. You are not broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. It's simply that we want to get rid of these layers, these conditions that prevent us from really showing up in the world as our best selves and as who we are, right? Self-love, any of these things, subscribe, hang out. I would love to have you. And the number one thing that I just want to share with you before we dive in today is that I'd love to invite you to join the waitlist for Access Your Akashic Soul, which is my 10-week deep dive intensive Akashic Record course, where you will learn how to work within the Akashic Records for yourself, for others, and also how to conduct energetic healing sessions within the Akashic Records through my own modality, Akashic Restoration Sessions. This is an action-packed course, so much engagement and involvement. And if you're someone who's been wanting to learn the Akashic Records, but you want a teacher and you want a community, and self-study isn't your thing, then definitely check it out, because this is the course that I would have loved to take when I first started working with the Akashic Records. And mind you, I took a lot of courses. I still take courses. I'm actually doing someone else's like little mini course right now because I love seeing what other people are doing. But I have to tell you that as a first line who likes all the details and all of the things, ultimately, these things really fell short of all of the questions I had and all of the, my guides have been my number one teachers in life, period. So make sure to check it out. The waiting list is open. And if you join the waiting list and join the the course via the waiting list, then you're going to get a really beautiful bonus. So make sure to do that. Registration opens up the middle part of September and we kick off October 5th. Oh my goodness. I can't believe it's coming. It is coming. It's so wild to me. All right. So let's kind of dive in. All right. So just taking a step back so that I can kind of reorient myself and what we're talking about today. Again, the Akashic Records are not a tool. They are not a modality. They are a way of life. They are a way of being. Okay. And so we're going to be breaking down again that sort of journey in regards to what happens to a human being when they begin developing a relationship with the Akashic Records, right? So first and foremost, there's a big difference between using the Akashic Records and mastering the Akashic Records. And why it's important for me to clarify this for you is because we've all been in the Akashic Records at one point in time or another. It doesn't matter whether you've ever intended to or not, because the Akashic Records exist within the frequency of love. You have stepped into the Akasha, maybe without ever intending to. Couple of months after I started working within the Akashic Records, I was in deep prayer one day and I was just like, holy crap, I'm in the Akasha. I hadn't even been expecting it. I was like completely surprised because I was never taught that the Akasha exists within the frequency of love, i.e. source energy. And so I had never put two and two together. But my point is just that, like, regardless of who you are, you've been in the Akashic Records. Being in the Akashic Records just kind of haphazardly or accidentally is very different from being in the Akashic Records intentionally and on purpose, right? And ultimately, what this really comes down to is whether or not you have a relationship with the Akashic Records. Mastery isn't being able to channel impressive information or give readings to other people or know everything about past lives, or like, that's not the type of mastery I'm talking about. Okay. The type of mastery that I'm talking about is understanding who the Akashic Records are, understanding what that frequency is, understanding the difference between being in the Akasha and not being in the Akasha. And, online, there's a lot of rhetoric about the Akashic Records. And like you go to YouTube and you type in the Akashic Records, and there are so many meditations that are like, yes, you can enter the Akashic Records here. My beautiful friends, please, 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 unless you already have an existing and a strong relationship with the Akashic Records, bounce out, okay? Because there are fake Akashic Records. They exist within the astral realm. And, unwillingly, you could really open yourself up to energy that isn't in your highest and best. And that may guide you in a direction that you don't really want to know. And you're going to be like, no, I'm working with the Akasha, but you're not. You're in the astral realm. And so you want to be really, really cautious about how you access the Akashic Records. So ultimately, the way that I look at the difference between using the Akashic Records and mastering the Akashic Records is ultimately just about the relationship that you have with them. How much do you show up with them? How much do you spend time in the Akasha? Do you know the difference between like Akashic energy and Reiki energy, or Akashic energy and other modalities? Do you know the difference? Because there's definitely a difference. And I'm not necessarily saying one is better than the other, but I will say Reiki comes from the Akashic Records, but the frequencies are very different. And I am a Reiki certified holy fire practitioner. And guess what? They're very different, right? There are all kinds of things out there. And so ultimately, mastery is about that knowledge that you have of the Akasha and of that Akashic energy, right? And this is where it begins to be something that is more of a way of life. Because when you know a frequency, oh man, things start changing, right? Number two, you can't spend that much time in love without changing love, without love changing you. Can I read my notes? I don't know if I can read my notes. Oh my goodness. When you spend time in the frequency of love, which is where the Akashic Records are, right? They are located at such a high frequency, they're in a different dimension. And yet at the same time, they exist around us at all times, which is why you have bounced into them before without even realizing it. Now, I just want you to imagine spending hundreds of thousands of hours immersed in a frequency where there is no judgment of you. And I'm going to say that again because it's kind of huge to think about, right? Who would you be if you spent hundreds of thousands of hours immersed in a frequency where there is no judgment of you, where your mistakes make sense, where your words have context, where your lifetimes have context, right? Where another person's behavior can be seen through the enormous journey of their soul rather than simply through what they've done in this lifetime, where God isn't standing there disappointed in you. What do you think happens to a person who spends time in that frequency? Pretty incredible, right? You may or may not have grown up hearing about unconditional love, because I grew up in a Christian home and read the Bible and went to church. I heard so much stuff about unconditional love. Did I see it in action? No, I did not. No, I did not. And, we are human, right? I don't honestly believe any human is capable of unconditional love. I just don't. I heard someone say years back that the strongest example that we have of God's love on this planet is in dogs. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's perfect. Because, you can kick a dog and it still loves you. You can, feed a dog and it loves you, right? Like, you really have to do a lot of harm to make a dog not like you. You know what I'm saying? And God is the same way. There's nothing you can do that will make God love you more or less. It is the same. And so what happens to a person who spends time in this frequency, right? You begin internalizing it. You become less judgmental, more compassionate. Maybe forgiveness becomes easier. Maybe you stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to be fixed, a project in action, right? Maybe you stop dividing life into good, bad, right, wrong, success, failure, right? Because you have experienced seeing life in a completely different way. And that recognition begins following you and starts seeping into you and starts becoming a part of who you are. Oh my gosh. Because ultimately, that is who you are. Number three, the Akasha teaches you how God sees you. And this really is kind of in conjunction with my last point, but I wanted to point it out separately because it's so huge. And honestly, it's so important. God gives us unconditional love. And again, this is not about religion. This is not about philosophy. This is not about anything to do with human-ish, okay? God is infinitely so much greater than that. I remember as a young girl, oh my gosh, in my teens, my 20s, people would find out I was a Christian and they wanted to argue with me. And I don't argue with people about their beliefs, when it comes to religion and spirituality. Like, if it's working for you, babe, have at it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're going to ask me about mine, I will share it with you. But there's no part of me that has any interest in making you do this thing or telling you that there's this only one right way. No, I'm not going to do that. I will share with you what I believe, and you can take it and you can do whatever it is that you want with it, right? Because ultimately, God is personal for each one of us, and God shows up differently for each one of us, right? And there are endless ways to God. But when you work in the Akashic Records and you spend time in the Akashic Records, again, you're spending time in a frequency that doesn't judge you. Like there's no judgment there at all, right? And so what happens is you begin to repeatedly experience yourself from a soul level perspective. You begin realizing how incredibly different that perspective is from a human one, right? Your human self may say, like, oh man, I fucked up, but the Akashic Records will show you why it's necessary. Your human self may be like, oh my gosh, why did I spend so many years doing that? But the Akasha will show you what you learned in that process. Your human self will say, something is wrong with me. But the Akasha will show you all of the experiences that have created you and the you who is underneath all of it. Imagine learning to look at yourself the way God looks at you. And this is something that takes time, Some people, I get it kind of immediately. When I came to the Akashic Records, I didn't have context for working in these spiritual fields. I didn't understand. Like I was new. And so it took me some time, but I got to tell you, because I've always been a deeply spiritual person and I'm very personally connected with God, I was able to kind of see very quickly, like, oh, wow, this is different. Now, it took me time to understand why it was different and how it was different, but there was an internal knowing that happened immediately. Like the very first time I went into the Akashic Records. And the first time I went into the Akashic Records, I talk about how it was like being thrown in a washing machine. I was being tossed all over the place. I kind of saw some words come up. I felt some things. My stomach really hurt. It was like, it was weird. It didn't last long. And I got out and was like, whoa, oh my gosh, there's something here, man. And I knew that my life was never going to be the same, but it took me time. It took me experience to really be able to wrap my mind and my understanding, my embodiment around what it is to be in the Akasha and then what it does to us. So imagine learning how to look at yourself the way God does. Imagine doing that for long periods of time, for years. How could you possibly remain the same person, right? Number 4, and this is huge. This really, I think, elevates life in such incredible ways. You begin seeing other people differently as well. That is, of course, because when you are in the Akashic Records, you are seeing things from a soul level perspective. And you begin to realize very quickly there's so much more going on at any given time than I can actually see with my human eyes. So maybe someone hurts you, and maybe it feels very much like it's one thing. And you go into the Akashic Records and you ask them about this. And then you see immediately it's about something very different. There's so much more going on here than you realize. We think things are in black or white. Earth is a polarized planet. And so this whole like right, wrong, yes, no, good, bad, that begins to fully break, not only when it comes to yourself, but when it comes to the people in your life, right? So someone will hurt you. And yeah, you'll be upset, you'll be pissed, you'll be like, but there's going to be a part of you that's going to be like, I wonder what's going on with them. I wonder why they're acting this way, right? And you're going to begin having this sort of inclination to approach situations differently. Now, mind you, this doesn't mean that you're just going to roll over and let people treat you poorly. No, no, no. There is a big difference between compassion and permission, right? Seeing someone from a place of love doesn't mean you have to tolerate their behavior. In fact, love is saying no to that behavior, right? Understanding the soul does not mean that you have to abandon yourself. Seeing someone from a soul level perspective doesn't mean that you have to make excuses for them or allow them to continue this behavior, right? But forgiveness doesn't require anything really other than perspective shifts. And ultimately, forgiveness is really about our own selves anyway. Because think about it. When you get hurt by someone, of course, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. But what's at the bottom of that? What's at the bottom of that is this like, oh man, I shouldn't have trusted them. Oh my gosh, why did I let them in my life? Oh my, like ultimately, we're upset with ourselves. And so when you think about forgiveness, yeah, you can be like, especially if you're working in the Akasha, you may see something from a very different perspective. And you're like, okay, well, they grew up in this home, this thing happened to them. So this is probably why this behavior feels normal or acceptable to them. And then you can shift into, and I forgive myself for opening up to this person. But the cool part about working in the Akasha, because these are two different conversations that I'm trying to have right now, one about forgiveness, one about forgiving, like being able to see someone through the Akasha or from a soul level perspective, two very different things. So my apologies, I'm getting kind of confusing. My point is that, okay, when you work in the Akashic Records, you see things from a completely different perspective. One of the most incredible things that I have learned in doing hundreds of thousands of readings at this point is that the person, more often than not, basically, like I'd say 97% of the time, the person who is hurting you most in life is the person that you trust the most outside of this incarnation. That is why you gave them the job to be the one that hurts you. And I remember learning this years ago, and I was just like, wait, what? It was mind blowing for me. And that little piece of information. And I saw it again and again and again and again and again when doing all these readings for other people, because it was kind of hard to like take on for myself, right? But when I saw it happening in the lives of others, I was like, oh, oh, oh. You start realizing things very differently, right? And this is where the Akasha can actually make you more grounded and more boundaried. It's not about spiritual bypassing by any means. It's just understanding that perspective is really powerful, right? Number 5, and I really love this one because ultimately, this can just inundate so many different areas of our life. And this is truth becomes something that you can feel. All right. And again, for my folks who already work in the Akashic Records and have for some time and have a relationship with the Akasha, this one. You know this one, right? Because this connects directly to your ability to move through the world, to have strong discernment, to listen to your intuition, right? When you work in the Akashic Records and you've spent enough time receiving information from the Akasha, you become intimately familiar with that frequency of truth. And I see this happen basically with everyone, okay? Whether or not they've been working in the Akasha for long periods of time. It's like the Akasha will say something to you and you're like, oh my gosh, like my entire body, like your entire body comes to life, right? Because it's like, this is truth. I know this with my entire being. And then you begin to really become familiar with that frequency of truth. And this is invaluable, absolutely invaluable, because as a society, we are drowning in information. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an answer. Everybody is preaching like, a method, a framework, a thing, a platform, or whatever. But information isn't the same thing as truth. And especially in this day and age, like it's so important for us to be able to understand truth, for us to be able to feel that truth, right? And so when you begin working with the Akashic Records, you get to feel what it feels like to connect with truth. And you realize it's happening in your body. It's happening in your heart. It didn't happen in your mind, you know. Not that like there's nothing going on there. I'm just saying like it's like a full body yes. And I'm sure that you've heard that term before, right? It's beautiful because you can take you can take these feelings, you take these frequencies from the spiritual world into our very 3D everyday world, right? Number 6, the Akasha removes the difference between you and God. If you are someone who has struggled in your relationship with God, if you are someone, and I'm one of those people, it always kind of surprises people when I talk about this, but I came into this lifetime knowing God. I also came into this lifetime being pretty pissed off at God, upset with God, angry with God. That it's a whole story that I'm not going to get into right now because honestly, it's not about me. This is about you and your own relationship with God. And I'm just letting you know, like, if you're someone who's been really pissed off at God or you've had like a complicated relationship with God, like, I feel you. I understand you. And it's okay. God has enough space and enough love for us to always be like, come on, come at me, come at me. You can throw it at me. You can tell me you hate me. I'm still going to be here and I'm still going to be here loving you because that's who God is, right? When you begin, when you develop this relationship with the Akasha, when you, oh my gosh, again and again and again, are in the energy of love, are in this energy of non judgment, right? Everything shifts for you because you and your relationship with God start coming together, start converging. The distance becomes less and less and less. And you realize more and more that having this relationship with the Akasha is ultimately about having a relationship with God, who also is a part of you. All of it's like looped in together. It's just the wildest thing, right? And one of the reasons why the Akasha may feel familiar to you, especially once you spend more time in there, is because it's a coming home. You know what I'm saying? It becomes something that you embody. You know it, you trust it. I honestly haven't ever come across someone and look, there are, unfortunately, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of rhetoric online about the Akashic Records. And there are a lot of people who are pushing the Akashic Records in disingenuous ways. Not because they're bad people, just because they don't know. Perhaps they learned from someone who also wasn't truly connected to the Akasha. The other day on Threads, I actually blocked someone because she was sharing like a transcript from like a reading with a client that she had, and it was very apparent to me that this was not the Akashic Records, and also it was very damaging what she was sharing. And I went to her website, I checked her out. I wanted, she had shared who she learned from. And I think that I don't think again, this is not, she's not trying to, there's nothing wrong with her. I'm not, you know, I think she's honestly a beautiful person. I just think she's misguided in that, right? And so that's again why it's so important to really ensure that when you work in the spiritual world, when you open yourself up to these things, that you're doing so with someone who's truly aligned, i.e., rooted in love, especially when it comes to the Akashic Records, because the Akashic Records exist within the frequency of love. And love isn't some ooey gooey thing, right? Love is an action. It is power. It says no as much as it says you are beautiful no matter what. You are perfectly imperfect, right? That is love. And if someone's teachings aren't rooted in love, then they are definitely not working in the Akashic Records, okay? But my point just being is that the distance between you and God will become less and less and less. It becomes a way of life. And as someone who prays every day, when I'm talking with God, it's just so wild to me because if I'm really there and I'm really present and I'm really like, I am in the Akasha, I am in that energy, and I'm, God and I are one because we are, right? Number 7, healing happens without even trying. And healing, again, for me, my definition is coming back to who you are. You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You aren't a project. Okay. However, you have spent your entire lifetime and probably many other lifetimes here on this planet. You have been conditioned. You have had experiences, wounds, all kinds of things. You are a human being. And ultimately, healing is about removing those layers that keep you from really being yourself, really showing up and giving the world the great gift that you are to it, right? When you spend time in the Akashic Records again and again and again, in the frequency of love, in God energy, you begin to shift. Your own frequency changes. And I've talked about this a lot, because, when I came to the Akashic Records, I really struggled with anger. I really struggled with a number of different things in my life. And I never came to the Akashic Records like, hey, help me to be a nicer person. Hey, help me to see people from a different perspective. Hey, help me to XYZ. These things happen naturally simply by me being in the Akashic Records, because that's what the frequency of love does. When you hang out in it, you become it. Everything is energy. And anytime two different energies interact with each other, they are both changing a little bit different, right? But the frequency of love, I mean, like, are you kidding me? Everything, it was created from the frequency of love. It is the end all be all, as far as I'm concerned, right? And so obviously the frequency of love is a lot stronger than my bad mood, my anger, my judgment, my issues, my whatever. And the more and more time that I spent in the Akashic Records, the less and less I was this way. And I wasn't even trying. Or the Akasha would really draw me in to working on things. Anger is such a perfect example, because I didn't go to the Akasha like, hey, I've got an anger problem, I need to figure this out. No. They brought it up to me slowly, as they do so tenderly. They showed me why. They showed me what it's about. They showed me the purpose that it's serving. They also taught me about anger itself. And anger is not bad. Anger is fantastic. Through the Akasha, they've said anger is a protector, it is a motivator, and it is a healer. Anger is incredible. It's what we do after we get angry that gives it, that negative connotation that we mostly associate with anger. But anger is an incredible emotion. It's so powerful. It's honestly my favorite emotion. I know it sounds kind of crazy to say, but it is. Outside of love, of course. But I'm saying the longer you spend in the frequency of the Akasha, like, you just become changed. You don't have to think like, oh, I want to be a more compassionate person and I want to be less judgmental. I want to, any of these things, it just happens. You become what you repeatedly expose yourself to. And this is just common sense. Again, energy changes energy. And in the entrepreneurial community, it is espoused that like you become like the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so a lot of extremely very high performing entrepreneurs are crazy picky about who they spend time around, because they need to be around people that are elevating their frequency. And so they're not hanging out with like people who are constantly complaining or getting lost in victim mentality or, no. They have big dreams. They want to do big things. And so they want to be around other frequency that is going to help elevate that. And this is kind of the same way, right? Number 8, this is why I call the Akashic Records the highest of high. And it's not like I call the Akashic Records the highest of high. The Akashic Records are the highest of high. And I've had, tarot practitioners, psychic mediums, those kinds of folks get mad at me when I say this before. And I never intend to upset anybody because it's not about, this is better, whatever. Like, I don't see things that way. First and foremost, there is hierarchy to all things. You look at nature, there is hierarchy, but it doesn't mean that simply because, the lion is at the top of the food chain in its, environment, that is any better than any of the other animals that are hanging out in its space. That's not how it works, but there is hierarchy. That is the way it works. And the Akasha is the highest of high. So psychic mediums, tarot readers, Reiki practitioners, whatever, all of that comes from the Akashic Records. That is the highest of high. That is where all of that energy comes from. And so when you spend time in that space, of course, it changes you, right? The Akasha shows you past, present, future possibilities, this lifetime, other lifetimes, how to understand relationships, pattern, purpose, decisions, energetics, the human perspective, the soul perspective, right? And it's so much more than information. It's about the frequency itself, which is why working in the Akasha is a way of life. It's not a modality. And mind you, I love tarot and I love Reiki and I love all of these modalities. I have several friends who are psychic mediums and they're amazing. We need each and every one of them. So it's not about like, oh, this is better. But let me tell you, if you are called to the Akasha or you want that like one dedicated place where you go, here you go. And I've told this before, it's like when I was a Christian, I did not pray to Jesus or to Mary or to Magdalene or any of those things. No. I went straight to God. I'm like, I want the top guy. Okay. Top person here. God is not a guy and not a person, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I want the top dog. And yeah, that's what the Akashic Records are. When you work, it changes who you are, right? And the access itself is more important than any answer you will ever receive because, again, it is a frequency. It is a way of being. And number 9, my last one, the records, the Akasha, they don't make you less human. They help you become more of who you are. And that is why I love them so freaking much. When I have spoken about over the last couple of years or said like the Akashic Records, the greatest tool for self-empowerment, what I really should have been saying is that they are the clearest path to self-empowerment. My marketing brain is like coming on board and it's like ding, 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 ding. There are multiple ways I could have said this without putting it into this category of like tool, modality, whatever, because it's just not, right? But when you work in the Akashic Records, you heal. Literally, you release the things that don't serve you. You learn how to see things from a different perspective. You give out more grace and compassion to the people around you, to the world around you. And if you've been around, you've heard me talk about so many times, like, I can't imagine living through our current times on the planet right now without my connection to the Akashic Records. I just can't. Even though I have always had a very strong relationship with God, I wasn't having these like, hey, God, tell me why Donald Trump got into office again. I wasn't having those conversations with God. And I certainly like wasn't able to see things from this like soul level perspective. No. I had unconditional love in my life. I always had God in my corner. I always had so much. But the Akashic Records, they make it very practical. They make it very 3D. You can go to the Akashic Records if you need a new hairstyle, if you need to create a logo for your business, if you need to understand why there is hate on the planet, why this person is doing that, whatever the case may be. And how insanely valuable is that? Not just for understanding the world around you, but also because it helps you to return to who you are instead of just reacting to everything else in life. Because when you're able to see things through the Akashic Records from a soul level perspective, right? Someone harms you and you see like, oh, this comes from this aspect of them. You flip that around. You see that in yourself and you realize like, oh, wow, this is why I do what I do. You find more compassion, more love for yourself. You heal in so many ways that honestly are kind of hard to wrap it all around, right? The Akashic Records don't remove your humanity. They teach you how to love humanity. And that's just the truth. And I'm laughing because, if you've heard me talk about my definition of heaven when I was a kid, it was sitting in front of God and asking questions and being able to learn all the things and then running off into the woods to be with animals, not be around people, not be with my family, my friend. No. I wanted to be with animals. I've always kind of struggled with humanity because I haven't understood so many of the things that are normal, like being unkind to each other, or I don't understand these things. They're very hard for me. My heart is too big for this everyday world. But through the Akashic Records, I have really stepped into a completely different place with understanding people around me and loving people around me. And it has been huge. So I want to say that one more time. The Akashic Records don't remove your humanity. They teach you how to love humanity. And if you're someone who struggles in this area, then come on down. Again, this is why working in the Akasha, having this relationship, it's a way of life because it changes your everyday life. When I go to the store and I'm checking out and maybe the cashier is really rude to me, I don't get offended anymore. I don't get upset. I'm like, man, I hope whatever she's dealing with at home is okay. Man, I hope she can pay her bills. Man, I hope that her boss is nice to her. I see things different. And honestly, like my ability to love humanity more has only resulted in me being able to love me more. Because ultimately, how we care about others and how we judge others and how we love others is just a reflection of what we're doing to ourselves. And I was pretty hard on myself, extremely hard on myself. And I still got a ways to go, no doubt. But man, I catch myself every once in a while in those moments where people are really rude to me, or even when someone hurts my feelings. And I react so differently now. And I'm like, yeah, girl. It's a way of life. It is completely different. And I can't invite you enough to come build a relationship with the Akashic Records. Again, Access Your Akashic Soul kicks off October 5th. I said November in my last episode too. Whew, I get excited. November. Oh my gosh. October 5th. Hello, October 5th. That's when we're kicking off. You got time, but make sure you join the wait list. You will be learning more about the Akashic Records, just even leading up to it. So even if you join the wait list to learn more about the Akasha, it's a great way. And I would love to have you in this beautiful third cohort. We've got so many incredible things happening, coming forward. Whatever the case may be. I just want to say thank you for being here, sharing your time with me. Please share this episode with a friend. Leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, so I can get this out to more people. I am sending you so much love, beautiful soul. Thank you for being here. And don't forget, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.